Hey, what's up? My name's Alea. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to another reading vlog. So today we're going to be starting a queer reading vlog for the month of June, and I'm really excited because I have a whole bunch of books that I have been wanting to read that are all queer. And so I think this is going to be kind of a mood reading vlog. I'm just going to pick up whatever I feel like reading, but I have a few things that are like kind of tentatively on my TBR. So one of the ones I'd like to get to is a new 2025 release, and it's called Be Gay Do Crime. So this is edited by the same person who made Peach Pit, which is one of my favorite short story collections. It's a lot of like feminine rage stories. And so this one is a new collection from Miss Molly, and this one is all gay stories. And I'm really excited to get into it. I think it like just recently came out in like the last couple of months. So I've been waiting to get my grubby little paws on that. And then I also would like to read the new collection that Lee Mandello edited together. And this is also another queer short story collection. I think it's called Amplitudes. The cover is really pretty, but I think there's a whole bunch of authors in there I've never read from before. So I'm curious to see what I'll think of that. But that one's on Kindle Unlimited, so I really want to pick that up too. I might not read all the stories from both those collections in this vlog, but I'd like to at least read some of them. And then I also kind of want to read The Chromatic Fantasy. So this is a graphic novel that I bought a few months ago when I was in Minneapolis, and it's absolutely stunning. This is like the debut graphic novel from this author, and the art is so gorgeous. And it's about a trans guy who is trapped in his life as a nun and ends up like speaking to the devil and letting the devil possess him and help him like break out of this nunnery. And then he lives a life of debauchery and falls in love with like another gay man. And that's the tea. And the art is so pretty. It's got this like super vibrant, almost like Alice in Wonderland court jester vibe to the art style, and I think it's really stunning. I also have a copy with like gold sprayed edges, so it's really cute, and I really want to get to that. And then I also have one from Casey McQuiston. I think it's called The Pairing, that I bought a few months ago, and I love Casey McQuiston's writing, so I'd like to read that one too, or at least start it in this vlog. And I'm not sure what I'm going to think of that, because I think a lot of people don't like it as well as her other work, so I'm curious to see what I think. But I remember at the bookstore the beginning was really good, so I'm really excited to read that one as well. So those are the ones that are like kind of on the docket, but I might add in some more later or like switch things out if I feel so inclined. But that's kind of my game plan for this reading vlog. So without any further ado, let's get into the reading. hello, my sweet petunias. I have a reading update for you. So I started reading The Pairing by Casey McQuiston. So far I'm not very far in at all, but I wanted to show you I have a really fun copy that has like all these cool sprayed edges on it. And this part says, some things taste better together. And apparently this one is set in Europe, mostly on like a European tour kind of vibe. But the beginning starts off with our two main characters, Theo and Kit, and they clearly have like a very fraught and complicated relationship. So the thing I thought was interesting about this is that it says that it's starting at like the beginning of their relationship with Theo's POV. But it sounds like their relationship even goes back farther than that, because they were childhood best friends, and then they kind of had a crush on each other, but they never told each other when they were younger, and then they end up becoming roommates later on. And it sounds like Theo has always been super down bad for Kit, but never got around to telling him. And then once they move in together, then Theo's like, okay, this is my chance to like get over Kit. Like, I'm going to see him, with no teeth brushed, in the sweatpants, like crusty, and I'm not going to love him anymore, which is crazy behavior to move in with somebody you know you're in love with and you think you're just going to get over them, like as if, but okay, whatever. So they moved in together, and then Theo is like, realizing that he's not over Kit and that he's in fact very down bad for him in the present. And Kit is kind of like, well, what if we just like kiss, just like see what it was like? And Theo's like, oh my God, like I'm gonna fall over and die. Like I can't just like play games like that, but whatever. So they end up like hooking up, and that's where it kind of like opens, which is crazy to open with people who are already in love, already hooking up. And so I'm not sure how I'm gonna feel about this, because I really do like to see like the budding beginnings of a relationship. And it's, they talk about it like it's the beginning of something, which I think it kind of is. We open with like the beginning of them finally admitting that they do have feelings for each other and that they, are going to do something about it. But then we don't get to see them when they're kids from the beginning, if that makes sense. So I think something ends up happening though, because like the chapter after that, they are like broken up. So it sounds like they had this dream trip to Europe planned where they were going to go on this like awesome food and wine tour together, and then they have a breakup like right after the flight. So like they fly into Europe and they just like broke up on the plane, and now they're like stuck in Europe. And so anyways, that's like where I'm at right now. So still very much like in the beginning stages of this novel, but so far it's interesting. I like the writing style a lot. I've always really liked Casey McQuiston's writing. The last stop by her is like one of my faves. And so I'm really excited about this. And I've also heard though that in this, they like hook up with other people when they're in Europe, because they are technically not together at that point since they broke up on the flight. And so I'm not sure how that's gonna go, but I feel like they have a really strong relationship. It's just one that's like very fraught and very messy. So if you're into stories with like the fraught and messy gaze, like this might be for you. And I also really enjoy that. So far I'm having a really good time. And then I also am over halfway through the Chromatic Fantasy. So I wanted to show you this lovely book in all of her stunning glory, because I just think this is like one of the prettiest books that I've ever had. And I'm really excited about this. I have been trying not to like read it too quickly, because I wanted to be able to like chat with you about it and show you some of the art. So like this is one of the chapter headers. Isn't that stunning? And then the art style in here is just so like whimsical and fun. It's very, very Alice in Wonderland energy, very like Queen of Hearts, I feel like. And I just really love it. So we're following our main character, Jules. And I think I mentioned at the beginning, like Jules is a trans man who's trapped in his life as a nun. And basically he starts hearing this voice in his head, like at the nunnery. And they have this really creepy, whatever, like place where they pray and stuff, but there's a big gold chest in there that supposedly like has the devil trapped in it. And then Jules starts hearing the devil talking to her, and the devil's kind of like, if you let me out, like I'll help you, like I know that you really want to be a man, and if you let me out, like I'll help you, become a man, and you can be free of the nunnery and do what you want. And you can have love and you can have happiness, and it's not just going to be like religious punishment for the rest of your days, right? And so Jules is like, okay, cool. And so Jules basically like lets this devil out of the whatever, the chest that it's in, and it possesses jewels, but not in terms of like a possesses jewels so they have no agency or like their own thoughts, because they do, but it's like the devil is trapped in Jules's locket, and so now the devil is like a part of Jules, and there's also like some sexual stuff involved, but then as Jules is like getting free of the nunnery and starting to like create their own life, they are kind of like at the mercy of the devil in a lot of ways. Like the devil wants them to go and steal stuff from people, and they also kind of have to just to be able to survive, and it's really interesting. They kind of become like a highwayman, and during their stealing escapades, they run into this other guy, and his name is Casper. And Jules and Casper like quickly realize that they are both thieves, and they both have a lot of things in common, and they fall in love, and they have a really, really cute queer romance in here. And it's very fun. The art is beautiful. They go on so many adventures to like steal things, and they run around and eat food and go on adventures and break into places and fight snakes, and it's crazy. And I am kind of obsessed with this. I'm really bummed that there's no other books by this author that have been released yet. And the author talks about in the author's note how this was like their passion project that they committed to finishing, because I think this author's like written a lot of things that haven't been published because they never finished it, which honestly would have mood to start things and not finish your artistic projects. But this is the one that they really wanted to finish, and they thought it was going to be like a short story, and then it ended up being like an over 300 page graphic novel, which I think is really stunning. And they do the art and the writing, which I think is so good, because in a lot of graphic novels I found that the art is like beautiful, but the writing doesn't hold up, if that makes sense. Like it's very art focused and the writing usually falls flat, but this is not the case in this one. I think the art is really like some of the best graphic novel art I've ever seen, and the writing is also really funny and entertaining, and I have just been glued to this, and I've been fighting to update you before I read that last chunk because I really just wanted to like binge it, but I wanted to update you first because I think this is such a beautiful story, and it's a good queer romance, but it's also just like a really fun like raucous adventure story. Like it reminds me of like Robin Hood energy. Like there's all kinds of stuff in this fantasy world, and the author talks about how like they really wanted to write something that was a fantasy specifically and had a lot of like good queer rep, and specifically rep for like trans men, and I think that's really fun, and they really succeeded with the fantasy vibes, because there's like magical plays, and it kind of has like a medieval vibe as well. It's like Alice in Wonderland, but make it medieval, and add in the like stealing from the rich vibes of like Robin Hood. And our main character Casper is like putting on plays, and then his friends go and like pickpocket people in the crowd and stuff like that. And there's also like magical snakes and other magic beings in this world, and the devil, and there's a lot of talk in here about like cursed jewelry that Casper collects and all these different magical things. And there's like doors that can be sealed by magic that Jules can open because Jules is like harboring the devil or whatever, and it's really fun. And there's also kind of that discussion with like the religious vibes of the nunnery and that stuff too. So I think if you're into queer books or graphic novels or queer love stories or adventure stories, I think you would really, really love this, and I highly recommend that you pick this up. What an interesting story. I'd never heard of it before until I was in Minneapolis in a bookstore, and I saw this like gold foiling on the spine, and I was like, what is that? And I literally just bought it because I thought it was beautiful, and I love the art style. And so I'm really glad I bought this because I think it's great, and I don't think enough people are talking about it, and it's amazing. So I think you should pick this up if you're into graphic novels. But that's kind of where I'm at with my reading for the moment, and I will update you when I've read something else. Hello, my sweet petunias. I have a reading update for you. So, I've been reading some more of The Pairing by Casey McQuiston, and I just want to say, first and foremost, that my bad for totally getting this author's pronouns wrong. I think Casey McQuiston came out as non binary, like, since I've read their previous book. So, that's my bad for being ignorant. But I wanted to let you know that I've been reading more of this and I am loving this so far and I'm kind of obsessed with it. So, one thing that I'm realizing is that, first of all, everybody who said that this book is not good, I don't know if they were reading the same book I'm reading because I'm really enjoying this. And I feel like this is a great book to read for the summer when you just want like a big chunky paperback that you can just like sit down with on your little picnic blanket during your little weekend after you go to the farmer's market and just like peacefully read it and be transported to Europe because this book is taking place in various different countries. So it starts off in London and then they go to France and they go to Paris and they go to Italy and then they're going to Greece. And we get all these beautiful, vivid descriptions of the food that they're eating because they're on like a European food and wine tour. So they're going to all these restaurants and they're meeting all these local people and getting to taste all of this like different local cuisine. And half of the foods that Casey's talking about in here, I don't know what they are. I'm just like envisioning something scrumptious and it's lovely. And I'm just enjoying it so much. And I think part of it too is that the writing is so good. Like there's something about Casey McQuiston's writing that feels like when you go to your favorite restaurant in your town and you're like a regular there and you walk in and they're just like super welcoming and they already know what food you want to order and they tell you your order and you don't even need to look at the menu. Like that's how cozy Casey's writing is. And there's something about that that's just really comforting and like homey. And that's how I feel every time I read one of Casey's books is like it just feels warm and familiar and all of the characters just feel like they're your friends and it's vivid and it's great. And so I really want to read more of their backlist titles because I've only read One Last Stop and then this. But I think Casey has a YA book that came out that's sapphic, and then I think there's also Red, White, and Royal Blue, which I haven't read yet either. So I need to get on reading more of their backlist because I think it's just their writing works really, really well for me for some reason. And I feel like there's not a lot of authors where I pick up their book and like if I didn't know the title I would be able to like distinctly say like, oh, this is who wrote this book. But I can do that with Casey McQuiston's writing, which is really weird, but there's something about that where it's like even if I didn't know what book this was, I would be like, oh, Casey McQuiston wrote this book. Does that make sense? Anyway, I'm loving it is what I'm trying to say. Also, so I told you I think a little bit before about like the messiness of Theo and Kit's relationship, and how they were like childhood friends and then they dated and broke up and whatever. But part of it too is our main character Theo is non-binary. So I think I said that Theo had he, him pronouns. That was not correct. Apologies on my part. I did not clock Theo's non-binary T, and I am clocking it presently. But one thing I've noticed too with this, and then also with the chromatic fantasy, is that when the whole book is from one character's POV, and they don't like explicitly say what every character's pronouns are, because that would be weird. Obviously, the main character is not going to tell you their pronouns if it's from their POV, you know what I mean? So sometimes it's hard to tell like what the main character's pronouns are. Like I had to Google Theo's pronouns because the whole thing is from Theo's POV, and so obviously they don't say what their pronouns are. So anyways, that was confusing to me, but I've sorted it out. Now I just know I have to Google everybody's pronouns because I wish that we got like a page at the beginning because we get like trigger warning pages, right? But I wish we got a page that had like everybody's pronouns because that would be really, really helpful. Anyways, but I'm really enjoying this so far. I will say that I can see where the element is in here that people don't like because Theo and Kit basically have this, you know, they've been various things to each other over the years, but basically Theo is really excited to go on this trip because the two of them broke up in London, like right after they got off of the flight, because they had a big fight on the plane and broke up, like right when they were going to go on this European tour. But the tickets were still good for another like many months after that. And so Theo was like, okay, I'm going to go on this trip. It's going to be like the way that I get over Kit. And then Theo goes to go on the trip, and Kit had the exact same idea to use up the tickets before they went bad. And so then they end up being stuck on this tour together as exes. And it's very fraught, but they kind of decide like, okay, this is Europe. You know what I mean? Like, we're not gonna like make each other's lives hell during this whole thing. So we're basically just gonna like decide to coexist on this European romantic adventure through the vineyards and like going to all these lovely restaurants. But they're also both like super into food. Like Kit is a pastry chef in Paris now, and Theo is a bartender and is a sommelier, which is like somebody who works with wine and like wine tasting and stuff like that. So they're both like big foodies. And so this whole book is basically just like a love letter to like Europe and traveling, and specifically food and wine and all these things. And they clearly have like so many things in common. So like as they're going from city to city, they're kind of like slowly falling back in love, but they're also both like fighting it because they have a lot of like, I don't know, animosity towards each other, and they kind of have to work through their differences and like realize that they had a lot of miscommunications in their breakup. And they're kind of realizing that really it wasn't as bad as they both thought. They both just didn't really communicate with each other very well at the end because they were upset, if that makes sense. But the thing that really pisses people off, I think, about this book is that in order to like kind of keep that distance romantically, they basically strike up a deal that they're going to have like a hookup competition as they're going on this European tour, because they are like both at that phase where they're like, we're both over each other, you know, like let's go hook up with other people. And originally it doesn't start off that way from the beginning. Like I'm over 100 pages in now, and the hookup competition doesn't start until like it doesn't start at the beginning, if that makes sense. Like they kind of talk through their shit first, which I think is good, but they're already kind of like being flirtatious with other people and stuff because they're not together, right? They don't owe each other anything at this point. And so I think it's acceptable. It doesn't feel like a Ross and Rachel, like we were on a break kind of thing. It's not that at all. But it is kind of like, I don't know, a little bit tough because it's like, oh, you guys probably shouldn't be hooking up with other people. But at the same time, it doesn't feel icky. Like the way that they set it up, they both agree to it. And it's more of like a joke. Like it's more of a bit. Like they're just like kind of messing with each other. And then they agree to do it for fun because they're already kind of like being flirty and hooking up with people anyways before they start the competition. And so it doesn't feel like they're using people per se. But they do kind of have that moment where it's like, okay, we're kind of into each other again, and the romance is kind of rekindled, but we don't want to admit it, and we're still actively like, you know, getting with other people. So I could see why folks would be frustrated with that element of this story, but I still think it's really fun, and I think everything in here is like all in good fun, if that makes sense. And they do really have like a good relationship and a good foundation, and you get to see more of like their relationship when they were kids and stuff. As the story progresses, you get like flashbacks and stuff. So I do feel like I'm being filled in, if that makes sense. So overall, I'm loving this so much, and I feel like this could be a 4.5 or a 5 for me. And I'm just loving it. Like I want to be in this world, and I don't like every time I put it down, I'm mad that I have to put it down to like go do things like, you know, eat and pee and whatever, but I'm loving this. So this has been fabulous to read this. And then I also wanted to let you know that I finished the Chromatic Fantasy as well. And this, I think I'm going to give a 5-star because I don't think I could ask for anything else from a graphic novel. And I will say the ending of this has a lot of like fight scenes and stuff, but I thought it was really well done. But anyways, I'm having fun, and I really, really enjoyed this. And I also wanted to say that the main character, Jules, in here does use he, him pronouns. And I know that. When I said they in the previous clip, it was because Jules has this entity that's like the devil that is kind of like possessing him. And they are technically like two minds in one body, if that makes sense. And so it was more of like a they plural, not a they them. Does that make sense? Anyway, but the thing with the devil is interesting because the devil has like fire magic powers, and Jules is able to like use the devil's fire magic, and the devil also speaks to Jules in his head like for the majority of the story, and so that's also interesting too. And the devil is also really jealous of Casper and like the romance that Jules and Casper have. Like the devil wants Jules all to himself, and Jules and the devil also have like a weird kind of sexual relationship in here too. And it's interesting. It's a whole nother like fantasy element to the story, but I really liked how that came into play at the end, and I thought it was really good and really fun. So this is going really well. The reading is going great. I also started some of the stories in Amplitudes, the short story collection by Lee Mandello, and that one's really good too. The first couple stories were pretty short, but the second one I really liked. I think it's called Trans World Takeover, and it's about these two kids who are in high school who are both trans, and they find these hormones on the black market, and they basically buy like different hormone supplements, and some of them are testosterone, some of them are estrogen, and there's like some of them are like things you inject or like pills you take or whatever, and basically they like make you trans if you take them over time. And so basically they live in a state where it's illegal to be trans, and so the high school students are buying these illegal black market hormones and then like sharing them with kids at their school who also want to transition, and they're basically trying to like get everybody in the school to transition so that everybody is trans, so that they can just like kind of take over the school and not have to like be under the homophobic thumb of the teachers and the principal and stuff. Anyways, it was really good. It was very entertaining, and I really liked it. I also really loved the like foreword, I guess it is, by Lee Mandello at the beginning of this. It's talking about like how fraught and weird like the current political climate is in the US and in the world in general, and how like these stories are all about trans futurity and like writing about potential futures that are more hopeful for trans people than our current timeline. And I thought that was really interesting and like beautifully written and really well done. And so I'm really enjoying this collection so far as well. So everything I've been reading, I've been loving, and that's been really fun. And I also wanted to give you a little bit of a book haul of the things I picked up at the used bookstore today. So the first one I got is a historical romance, and it's called The Last Debutante by Julia London. And I've never read this author before, but this looked really cute to me. I liked the beginning. I think it's about I want to say it's set in Scotland. It's like a Highlander kind of romance, and I'm not sure if it's part of a series. I imagine it probably is, but I think it's about this old woman who, I don't know if she abducts a man or if she, I don't know, she does something to him in order to try and like find a hot, brawny Highlander to like be with her granddaughter, I think. And then he ends up like abducting the granddaughter, and then they fall in love. Something like that. It's like some outlandish Scottish Highlander romance synopsis, but basically it sounds like there's like a grandmother who is like very nosy, and she, I don't know, she like finds this man, and she's like, you know who you'd be perfect for? My single lonely granddaughter. Let me just hook you up. And he's like, okay, well, I'm injured. He's been like shot or something. And so he's like, okay, whatever, I guess I need help. And then somehow he ends up abducting this poor girl. But then she's like, oh my God, he's hot. Actually, I do want to be with him. Girl, I'm here for the drama. Let's be real. I just thought this was really funny and sounded entertaining. And then I also picked up one that I've seen a lot of people say is really good, and it's called Lobizona. So this one I was originally intrigued by when I was at the store because there's talk in here about ICE, which I thought was interesting for the times, the current political times, obviously. And I didn't realize that this book had that in it. And anyways, it's about a woman, and I think some of her family members, or at least one of her family members, gets like arrested by ICE and gets deported, I'm assuming. And then I thought there was also something in here about werewolves. And I think that's why it has kind of like the the wolf on the back and like the moon on the front. So anyways, the combination of those two things sounded interesting to me. And I also thought it would be interesting to read a book that has like some of the ice rep in it, because I haven't read anything about that yet, and in terms of like in fiction novels. And there's also some Argentinian folklore elements to this story as well, and that also sounds really good. I think it's like a generational story about this family, and they are all like werewolves, and that sounds really cool to me as well, and it has to do with like their heritage and whatnot. And then I also found a copy of The Girl Who Drank the Moon, and this is one that I wanted to read a long time ago. I never got around to it, and I think it's about a town, like a little cozy fantasy village, and there's this witch, and I think people like make sacrifices to the witch, like they sacrifice children to her or something like that, and she lives by herself in this cottage in the woods. And then I think either this young girl gets sacrificed to the witch, or the witch finds her and like raises her as her own child. And then I think the girl also has like a little dragon familiar, if you can see that. But I've heard it's very like cozy fantasy vibes, and it sounds really fun. I think there's also a lot of like moon magic in here as well, and that sounds really fun. And I picked it up because the writing style was just like interesting to me when I was at the store. It starts off like in italics, and it says, "Yes, there is a witch in the woods. There's always been a witch. Will you stop fidgeting for once? My stars, I have never seen such a fidgety child. No, sweetheart, I have not seen her. No one has, not for ages. We've taken steps so we will never see her. Terrible steps. Don't make me say it. You already know anyways." So it's like a narrator talking to a little kid about this magic witch that lives in the woods, and like the story of how the witch like interacts with the townspeople or doesn't interact. And it just sounded interesting to me. So these are the ones that I picked up. And so it's my little book haul and my reading update. And I will update you probably when I've read something else. What is that? Hello, my sweet petunias. So I'm here to wrap up this reading vlog. So since I talked to you last, I read a couple more stories in... Hello, Nellie. My cat's crying. I read a couple more stories in the Amplitudes collection. So I read one about a girl who was a orgasm doula, which was really crazy. It was really good though. It was really well written. I really enjoyed that one. It was kind of about a world where there's like all these different kinds of doulas, but the orgasm doulas are kind of like frowned upon because they basically like go around and like help people have orgasms. Because in this world, people have been told that they get like a limited amount of orgasms, and then like after a certain point you like can't have them anymore. And it's just interesting. And the lady ends up having a kind of romantic relationship with one of her trans clients. And then there's another one that I read where this other lady worked at this like technology shop, and she was a I think it's called like a virtual medium, and basically she could go through somebody's social media accounts and basically like bring up their ghost, because some people were so like invested in social media that like a piece of their soul is like attached to all their accounts. And so sometimes people would come in and like they didn't get to say goodbye to their relatives before they passed away. And so she would like bring their loved one's ghost back for like a few minutes based on like their social media accounts. So she had like all these computer monitors and stuff, and people would come to her and she would bring their ghost back so that people could say goodbye. And so she had a client come in and do that. And then the ghost ends up like taking possession of her body for a little bit to try and like communicate with her loved one. Anyways, it was really interesting. I really like the like spooky paranormal vibes, but these stories are also just cool because they're about like trans futurity. And so since they're all like future worlds, they're all like really unique, and they have all these different elements that aren't happening in like the current world. And so there's like future technology stuff and just like different ways of thinking about how the world could be in the future. And I really like that. And I also really like that these stories are different, like in terms of the cultures and stuff, because in the intro, Lee Mandello talks about how they purposefully like asked different authors who aren't just all from the US, who are from like different countries and stuff, to write stories for this collection because they wanted it to be like really diverse in terms of the authors and stuff. So there's also another one in here that I read that I think might have been set in India. I'm not totally sure, it didn't explicitly say, but it talked about this like god coming down, and there was a main character who was trans, but they were still in a body that they didn't feel comfortable in. And the goddess came down and like reshaped their body like it was clay and made their body into a woman's body. And that was really interesting as well. So this is a really good collection. I highly recommend it if you're into queer stories. And then I also read a story from Be Gay Do Crime. I've only gotten to one so far, but it's really good. It's about a lesbian couple, and they find a baby in an alley and they decide to keep him, and they're raising him and they're like having a really good time and stuff. And then this lady sees them at the doctor's office because they're there to take the baby in because he's got an ear infection. And the lady basically is like, "Where'd you get that baby from?" And one of the moms, I don't know, like doesn't handle it very well and like runs with the baby. And so now this lady is like stalking them, and she is like hanging out outside of their house and stuff. And I think that this lady thinks that the baby is hers, and she has like a really toxic husband and stuff. So I don't know if she like had the baby and like left it by the dumpster in the alley or what. But anyways, it's very fraught. It's kind of a longer story. I think the stories in Be Gay Do Crime are a lot longer than the stories in Amplitudes. So anyways, if story length matters to you, I will say that. But they're both really, really good collections so far. But I think, yeah, no, that's all the reading updates I have for you. I haven't read any more of The Pairing, but I hope to soon. But I really want to wrap up this vlog because it's already pretty long. So if you made it to the end of this video and you want to leave me an emoji in the comments just to say hi, leave me a rainbow emoji. And thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in another video very soon. Bye!